Yeah. I realized that we've not done leaves at all. And sometimes just that the difference between flowers and leaves, you can use the same technique, but it's good to also practice leaves on their own. So I've shared these images. I'll just go over them. And I remember seeing actually one of my students from 2017 said this, that usually flowers sometimes are there, not there, but leaves are always there. And you can always use them as a topic to study. Like another friend of mine who often goes to nature reserves said so many people go there for a tiger or rhino, whatever, but they miss seeing the birds. There are always birds there or butterflies. So these are the things I guess we just take for granted because they're around. And I thought, okay, this is a good idea. Maybe we can focus on the leaves today. So my selection of leaves is quite varied. Some are tropical and some are autumn leaves, so distinctly not from places where we are. There are a few leaves in our regions also that turn color, like the badam leaf that goes right from green to yellow to bright reds and pinks also sometimes. But I couldn't find a good reference for that. So I'm using these photos just for us to get an idea of how color or varied colors other than green can be used for leaves. Here we have what looks like a grape leaf with all colors, autumn colors in it. You have green, yellow, red, purple, everything. Then the rest are mostly tropical plants, which are varied colors. A pink and green, light pink and light green, and dark green mix. Then you have a bright pink and green, another bright pink and purple and green combination. These are very nice. They almost look fake. They could be also. Nowadays, illustration is so good, I can't even tell whether this is real or fake anymore. But assuming that these might be real, because we have seen leaves like that, this is one option. And then you have this very nice option also of a light pink and a slate green and a deep green color. So we are just going to try to make individual leaves of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in case, sorry, and 5. And in the case of this, if we find the time, I'm just going to show you a quick technique to paint something like this, a composition like that, not just the leaves. That can come in handy if you want to make a card or a quick graphic, maybe a label or something. But the technique is more of negative painting, which at some point we will take up also. So to start off, we will draw these 5 leaves in pencil, not too large, just about the size, no bigger than about 2 or 3 inches at the most, and distribute them all over the paper. And then we will paint them in continuously, like alternating between leaves, because while we wait for one color to dry, the other colors can be filled in. So the first picture I'm drawing is the second in our message group. That's the grape leaf. Let me show you which one. It's this one. It's slightly complicated. So how I'll be drawing it is like this. I'll start off with first identifying the veins. We make a thicker line here. And this is easier to do because you can see these are just simple lines at a particular angle. And you can draw these first, and you can measure the lengths. So the lines on the sides are slightly shorter than the lines in the center. After this is done, then you break up each section and you will be able to see a structure over here. So in a sense, you will see that there is a external structure. I'll go to the right first. So this is the external structure. And within that, you will have uh, more gaps. And each of those will have striations, or not striations, it will have serrations. So when you think of something as complex as this leaf, it in the beginning we just get too overwhelmed. But if you break it up into large shapes and then small shapes, so you have this shape here like that, and then each of these shapes has about 2 serrations. It's easier to do this in sections rather than take on the whole leaf. So if I were to just try and draw it like this, in the absence of this picture underneath my pencil, it'll be near impossible to figure these things out. But if you break it up and you say, okay, this is one V shape, another V shape, and another V shape. And then we have the edges. So you have 1, 2, 3 serrations in each leaf. It becomes that much easier to tackle because you're breaking everything down into simple shapes and then smaller lines. All right. So let's try drawing this very lightly. Don't make it too large because we don't really need as much detail. So I'm making the first line slightly curved to the left. From here, assuming this is the center of a clock, the line on the left goes maybe between almost towards 8 o'clock. So I'll draw that. That too is not stick straight. It is curved a little bit on top and then goes straight down here. And then you have the line on the right, which goes towards maybe 4 o'clock. All the lines that go from top left to bottom right are a little difficult, but I would encourage you to draw it in the same orientation. Don't change this to make the drawing of the line easy because you might make a mistake in the direction. All right, once this is done, almost like I'm sure you must have gone to a parlor where when they're cutting your hair, they pull 2 strands to the side and see where are they matching. It's almost the same thing you do. Just see where the left point reaches and how high the right point is. And from that point, you can then draw the V shape inward like this. See how close it needs to come to the body. That'll give you an idea of how far you have drawn the line. It's not too far away, so the width of the leaf in the center also matters. So maybe over here. And then you have another leaf, the part that's closer. And then here there's a cut in the leaf. So do make that little cut. So these are adjustments. Constantly check whether these lines are as far or as near that you need them to be. So I'm just going to note down what you need to check for. So when you're drawing, freehand, all you have to do is make a line. So you need to check for length of the line, direction that you have to draw the line in, angles, and nature. Is it a straight line? Is it a curved line? So at every point, you have to check these things. And the last part, you also have to check for distances. I've gone and written too close to here. So I am going to have to paint over this. I don't know why. All right, never mind. Now, in the same fashion that we've drawn the lines over here, I'm now pulling down my the top of my leaf. That works well because now I want to anyway adjust. So I'm making new lines because I've got my proportion from the bottom suggesting that this distance is too much. I need to pull it down maybe over here. So all these are questions that you can ask yourself about your drawing, about your subject. Am I getting the length right? Am I getting the distance right, the angle right? And keep adjusting all the lines with respect to each other. And then you start getting the right shapes. At some point, you will become so comfortable with gauging these distances that you will not need to make a V shape, like a long V shape, and then do this. But till then, it's perfectly fine to give yourself your own markers and uh, draw more accurately with those. But the key thing is to keep adjusting. Every new line you make is part of the illusion, and you need to see that they're all saying the same story. Now, just so you are able to see this better, I'll make this in pen, but I don't encourage all of you to make it in pen. Also because I've got this lettering here. So I'm drawing that central vein, but I don't want my line to be too obtrusive. So I'm going to keep making it like a broken line. A broken line suggests a certain softness. Especially when you're drawing lines in black ink. Black can be a very difficult color. It can be very dominating. It's nature. You can't help that. But if it's used judiciously, it can bring a lot of definition to your drawing, but still not make it look like it's um, as dominating a color as it might tend to be. The thickness of the line, the nature of the line, all that can change this. Okay, now with pencil, you can make the extra veins that you see over here because they are going to play an important part later on. As you're making these lines, I'm going to ask you to erase the lines that you think are not necessary because they will interfere with our watercolor. Since we have to paint on this, only erase the lines that are unnecessary. So go on top of the line. Don't erase the whole line or all the lines and then hope to redraw. So in this process, if some of the lines that you want to keep on the page. Also, become light. Let that be. You will be able to see the line even if you don't draw it again. Okay, so this is done. Now, similarly, we can draw the rest of the leaves. Many of them are not too complicated. Like the next one is just simple leaf shapes extending outward. Just draw the top three. Again, don't draw them too big. I'm just going to draw them this small, and I'm going to draw them such that they fit into this space here. I always start from the leaf that's I think is in the front, and always with the center line. So here I have a line going again towards 8 o'clock, and then from the center of that, or the top of that line, I'm carefully going to draw the shape of the leaf. Now, this is very critical to get this shape right in its proportion. The difference between different leaves is basically just the proportions. So look at the thickness, how wide is the placement. And draw some of these lines because this gives you some sense of at least judgment for accuracy. Here also the angles do matter. So don't make all of them going straight or too curved. Look at each and every one of those veins to make sure that you're making the lines accurately. The line from the central vein goes outward, not up, outward, and then it goes down. So it looks like it's pretty round, but it does not go up. Then the next leaf is there's no stalk to this leaf. And right above this, I can't even see the stalk of that leaf. It goes behind the leaf. I have a vertical line going to about 75 degrees. Part of the left side of that leaf is hidden. And then the line goes outward. Now, if you have positioned your leaf in such a way that the new leaf edge is overlapping the earlier leaf, just follow that. Don't try to accommodate it. If it needs to go underneath the older leaf, let it do that. If it needs to go over the new leaf or the old leaf, let it do that. And the next one is to the side, almost towards 3 o'clock. I'm using the cues of the shape of the leaf from the one intact leaf we see, and also some others that we're not going to draw. So not all leaves are ending in points. You can draw this leaf on the side, ending in a flat edge like this also, to make it more natural. Because we can't see the outer edge, the point there. Now notice that in this and this leaf, you can clearly see that some of the veins on the side are starting from the central vein and others are just decorative lines along the sides in the middle. They don't come all the way to the center. That's most curious. I've never seen leaves like that before. Or maybe I've just not noticed. Does anyone know what this plant is called?
Yeah, this is Aglaonema.
Sorry, what is it again? How do you spell that?
I think it's Aglao, Aglao,
Hmm.
and Nema.
Okay, let me just look. Page
Red aglaonema. Yeah.
round.
And
Oh, okay, yeah, you're
I think
right.
if it is red, then it is also called lipstick plant.
Yeah.
Lipstick plant. Okay. Nice. So I'm gonna write this name. Aglaonema. Yes.
I have it in, outside, but I've never tried to see its name.
That's so interesting.
In my mind, anything that's colored leaf is like croton.
Exactly. And I knew only
Less
that name.
member.
Okay. All right, next one. Next one, the 2, 3 are fairly simple. We'll draw the next 3, I'll tell you. So you can draw them at your pace. There's this one. And Zai, do you study botany or something? How do you know these plant names?
No, so I have a master's in biodiversity and
Wonderful.
include so anything about insects, plants, birds, animals, I can answer.
Wonderful. That's a superpower.
So
Okay.
she's the treasure that you have in your class.
Yeah, I love this.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll draw this leaf. I'll show you how to draw this one, so don't draw it right now. And I think you can all attempt this one as well. So try this leaf and the last one. And this colored leaf, I will tell you. And once we've drawn them, then Zai can tell us the names that she knows.
Zai, what's the other one called? A bleeding heart?
So I think this one is a caladium.
Okay,
I'm not too good with the common names though,
that's okay. Common name we can always find out.
but it should be called a bleeding heart, no?
It
Yeah,
is.
it looks like that, no?
Bleeding heart is the one which has a flower that has things sticking out of it.
Yeah, that one also is a bleeding heart.
Okay, would you be able to figure out this bleeding heart? So try and figure out an easy logic. And I would leave it to you to figure out your own logic to draw this leaf, because everyone can come up with something that is their process. It doesn't have to be something that I do necessarily. Look at something easy that you can definitely draw that, and from there start making the complicated stuff. So I'm going to make the lower half of, or the lower part of the main stem. And based on the size of this line, the other sizes will be determined. So I'll have one part go up here. I'm measuring to see that this part is maybe about 2/3 of the lower half, lower section. And these two lines are ending pretty much at the same point. And then from here, I'm just going to take some distance higher and I'm going to start drawing the V shape in the center. The tip of the V on top is slightly narrow on the left and slightly wider on the right. And then the line just skates down till almost halfway of down the leaf or just about 2/3 of the lower part. So somewhere here, then it starts turning in and comes down to meet the center. Still some adjustments needed. Once you draw the details of these veins, you can start assessing the space. So once these lines come in, space starts getting crunched, and you can sometimes see if the edges that you've drawn are accurate, or they are too far apart, or they are too narrow or too long. And you can start making your adjustments. Now, when you're when you're doing a study of things like these, different kinds of leaves, it's nice to also create a composition with that, because then every time your page will look great. So I often see students' pages have color checks on the right corner or text written very casually. Don't do that, because that you miss out on an opportunity to make something that can look like a page, like a study page, but still beautiful. So make sure that your red lettering is good. It may not be perfect, but it's definitely made with some effort. Then when you are placing all these elements, give a thought to composition. So the next one we are going to make is that, again, downward facing leaf. So think about whether you want to make it coming down right next to the leaf in the center, this bleeding heart thing, so that the fifth leaf that's pointing upward can point this way in the middle, so that your spaces, your negative spaces, beautifully distributed. We have 3 leaves pointing downwards and then 2 leaves pointing upward. To make, even subconsciously, it becomes a very beautiful composition. Also, notice how one leaf over here is starting from the bottom. Here it's not bottom, lower than the lower from the top. The second is starting taller. If we make the third taller, this becomes a very weird composition. So start the next one lower. Every element that you add to the page is an opportunity to compose it more beautifully. Take a moment to think about it and then create it. So I spoke a little bit about this process in the Tuesday class, is that before you touch your pencil to paper or brush to paper, you can just imagine that you are at the start of something that where anything is possible. And if anything is possible, that means the next thing that you do could be the best thing possible. So if you imagine that, then give yourself a moment to think about what would be the best thing. Visualize that best thing for yourself. In visualizing, you will start putting down an expectation for yourself, and not as a wish. I wish this painting comes out well, because that means you are outsourcing that that action to something outside of yourself. But if you say, I want this color to sit in this place, and then you break it down a little bit more and say, I want it light, I want it watery, or I want it intense, you are giving yourself solutions. You can then make your color, you can make your shade, use a test paper, test it out. So what we don't tend to do is visualizing, trying, testing, and then making the mark on paper. We often just take the pencil and start drawing Bhagwan Bharose. And this is the worst technique, because often we don't, once the outcome is done, we check and say, "Arey, I don't think it's looking right," but you've never identified an intent for that line or that color. So take that moment before, and actually in the beginning, you should have to learn to say to yourself, okay, anything is possible at this time. And if anything is possible, then let me make the best possible. And then break down all the information, visualize everything on paper, and start slowly, carefully, and with intent. And with observation constantly. Is this line coming okay? What had I intended? This is close to that line or not close to the line. If it is not close to the line, I don't know what to do. I will make the next line and see how these two work. Otherwise, I will make adjustments. So use that time of contemplation before you start drawing or painting. So we'll try to do this through today's class. Now we have an opportunity to compose. Think about composition and think about options. What if I put that the leaf that's pointing upward? What if I put that higher and this leaf lower? How will that look? What if I switch? And then even if you don't have any particular, I guess, clear choice, just say to yourself, I'm going to do this right now to see the outcome, so I know for better for next time. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm making that pink leaf to the right, and I'm making it slightly lower. Here again, I will make the center vein. And make that V shape on top first. Depending upon the proportions of this V, my length, the length of my line is going to be determined. So based on this V, how does the rest of the line grow? So when you're drawing this, for every line you make, keep checking with the reference image. So you will never go wrong. Now, in this leaf, we don't have very distinct veins as such, but we do have color patches. And if you look at the whole patch, again, it looks very daunting. So start from the easier side. I find it easier from the front to the back. I'm going to make a line that marks out the pink at the tip. A little distance away, I'm going to mark the light green part. Then a little distance away, I will make this V shape in which partly we have a pink and partly we have a green. And then higher up, that's the shape I'm making. So once I get the first 2-3 shapes, the rest become much easier. And you have to keep checking with respect to the central vein, where have I come? So obviously now I have come much lower than I should be. So as I'm drawing these details, the proportions are changing. And my leaf is just going to become this tiny. Oh my God. This is very common in freehand drawing. Many of these shapes you may or may not get. Don't be too concerned about accuracy here. But what we are trying to do is just best of our ability. At any point, if you are confused, you're not sure what you need to do, how you need to do it, just distill that to the what is the least thing you can do and just do that much and leave the rest. When you paint, we can make those adjustments. Like, for example, all these holes that you have. There's no way we can draw these holes or all of them, but we can leave a few, and that's good enough. All right, now for the last leaf, Dai, would you know what the name of this leaf is?
Which one?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The one again with the purple.
Coleus.
Oh, sorry. And now I might as well ask you everyone else's, whichever ones you know. This one is
Coleus.
Coleas, US.
US.
EUS, huh? Coleus. Okay.
US.
All right. So for the coleus, I'm going to make again the central vein and then the shape of the leaf just with a simple smooth line first, and then break it up into all these serrations. So here, just for composition, I'm going to make this leaf slightly bigger than I think it should be, because the other ones are smaller than they should be. This will look a little dramatic. And then just draw a smooth line to give you the outer shape. Almost goes flat on the top and then turns up. Once you have this shape, then you can start making these serrations. I'm going to make these in pen so that you can see the detail. It's important to try to make them the way you see the line. Do not make a zigzag line like that. This looks quite annoying. I don't even want it on my page. So each of those shapes has a line that goes up, sideways, and down. And then every few sections, you have one tiny serration, tiny segment. Then you have one which are almost triangular pointed towards the middle. So all these things are what make your illustration look more accurate. So you should not be too lazy about it. The fun thing is that if you pay attention to these details, then when you paint very casually also, it does not really matter. You don't really have to count each and every one of those serrated sections, but just a more or less shape at that space. Over here on the top right, you hardly see any serrations because the leaf is along its edge. So you don't see the different ups and downs. So we also ought to not make that, just make it a little roughly kind of line, and then start making thin serrated edges. There. And here again, here I'd like to show you how the internal geometry of this leaf works. We have this line in the center, the vein. Oh, sorry about that. And then notice we have just a few veins going from the center outward, very apparently so. Okay. These will be easy to draw if we don't look at all the other veins. And then you have the secondary, like a tributary that goes outward, 1, 2, 3 from here, and then here, and they all go in between the leaves. So it's not very difficult to draw this if we just observe the lines carefully. And even if we are making a casual illustration, our casual illustration can have at least the seeming accuracy of a botanical illustration without the effort needed, just by the placement of our lines and careful observation. See? The same thing applies on the right as well. So now here, look at distances again. The first vein to the side itself is very low. It's not as high as you might assume. The second one comes maybe from this side. They're almost parallel, these two curves. And the third one comes a little distance away. Fourth one is again closer and more horizontal. The fifth one is like this. So there's a kind of radiation happening here. And you can mark some of these small lines. Remember, wherever you feel confused, don't draw the line. Now, the next thing we do is mark the light purple area. Those are just V-shaped demarcators, I guess, between these major sections. So I have a small V here. I have a large V here with the right side longer. Then I have a V that is closer to larger on the top and then hardly any pink on the bottom section. So just notice these little things in the reference image. Now from the right. All right, shall we start painting? Do you all need a minute? I'll just get my painting water. Okay, I'm going to start painting this first leaf. And now, here's one thing that I don't know if I've given you this tip before, but if you have an old spray bottle or something, try to keep this handy because during winter, especially, our kids get really dry fast. So instead of taking water in a brush and constantly hydrating it, keep this close by. So you can just spray the top of your cakes and they will instantly be hydrated and ready for use. And once in a while, if you need to reactivate some color in your palette, then you can do that also with the spray bottle. This is easy enough to carry around. Put it in your travel kit also. Now, brush size matters everywhere. Depending upon the detail you need to make, use a brush size that you're comfortable with. So I'm going to demonstrate how I'm painting this first leaf, and I would like you to just observe first and then paint. With this spray bottle, I have kind of hydrated all the colors that I need. I have greens, blues, reds, oranges, crimson, a little bit of brown. So ideally, one should take a lot of the colors on the palette. But in a situation where you need a little bit of color from everywhere, it's okay to just dip into these shades and start painting and then keep painting from one color to the next. The result is not going to look exactly like your reference image, but close to. Now, big brushes contain hold a lot of water and a lot of medium. So you have to be very sure about how much medium and water you want for this sized picture. If you can also do well with a medium sized brush, this is number 7. Or if you can control the volume in your big brush, then I would ideally say that is better. I have a little bit of green to start with. All the colors are impure colors because they are right next to each other and merging with each other. And before I start painting, I usually go over what the colors might be. So here I have a mix of sap green and light red. Here I have a mix of crimson and ultramarine blue. Here, pure crimson coming down into scarlet, orange, and then gamboge. Likewise, over here, a little bit of green and lemon yellow coming down into orange. So it really helps if you know your colors well enough by name so that you can quickly keep going through them. This is how I'll do it. I'm taking a little bit of green from my palette, but ample water, and the medium is not very watery. So here we have green and light red. And then I'm moving to crimson. If you have enough hydration, there is really no need to rush through this painting, though it is wet on wet. Here I'll continue with crimson. And now the best thing is, not the best thing, one thing to note is keep rotating your book so that you are always pointing towards the edge of the leaf. You should be able to see the leaf beyond your brush. Now I'm mixing this up a little bit. My crimson has become a little muddy, so I am adding orange directly. And when that orange and crimson will mix, it will automatically become more vibrant. So these are just creative decisions that you are allowed to make when you are making a painting, because after all, the reference image is only a reference image. You have to take charge of the outcome of your painting. I'm moving to gamboge now, so this will become even brighter. Drop my brush there. Now at this point, I'm adding a little bit of scarlet. And since these colors are all wet, all these colors will merge. So automatically we will get a very lovely colored leaf. Some more orange and gamboge over here for that brightness. And all that red and crimson is going to taper down and come to the bottom. Now I have a very weird yellow, green thing sticking out from the top. So I'm going to go over this part with more green and just hydrate it. Hydrate the edge so that it merges with the existing crimson. And just leave it be. Don't do too much musty over here. So the outcome was to have multiple colors in a leaf. And I got that. Some of the colors in some areas look like what the reference image looks like. I think I've got some here, I've got some here, and that's good enough. If I fret too much and I ask for something that looks exactly like a photograph, then at this stage it would be difficult. So don't ask for that. Simple enough. This in itself will look very beautiful if you don't compare it to the photograph. And again, one big mistake is when you are showing your work to anyone, don't show them the reference images, because then like typical Indian fashion, "Arey, but your color is not looking right." Our friends and family, as well-meaning as they might be, sometimes can be harshly critical of our work, thinking that they're actually helping us. So don't show them reference images. Reference images are only for you, only final outcome. And you'll be shocked at how impressed they are. And you think that you really don't know, do you? That this is at what level. So because of the color merges, expect a whole lot of clouds. Sometimes you might also get some stripes somewhere where the color might have dried, some patches. Let that be. Is everyone done? Or do you still need time?
Yes, 2 minutes, Aditi.
All right.
Aditi, you are on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. So I was talking about the coleus. We'll paint that next. The observation that I was making was that we have a very bright green color on the periphery, and the center is a nice bright pink color. We can make the center color by just using crimson, and the edges can be made using lemon yellow and sap green, or lemon yellow and cerulean blue. But the color in the middle is, before we think about how to make that, here's something that we can also try out. So use a rough sheet to test your colors first. We know how to make the peripheral colors. I'm going to try this with lemon yellow and cerulean, because that makes a very nice bright green. Better even than lemon yellow and sap green. Let me see. This is lemon yellow and cerulean blue. This is quite bright. And then we have crimson. A pure crimson is nice and bright and pink. But now, before I do anything else, I want to test one theory.
The crimson and green would give the same color?
So I'm going to make a color mix of a darker crimson, green, and I'm going to make a color block of crimson with that.
It almost looks like the colors of the leaves, green and the pink mixed on the leaf itself, no?
Exactly. So it is a very lazy leaf to paint, and that's ironic. You don't think that that is the case, right? So we are going to first paint the periphery. Oh, something's wrong with my system. The brush keeps falling down. Right. So the lighter color is green. So we'll first paint that along the periphery, and then we can start painting the crimson, and paint the crimson in first just this section, and then we will go into the space in between.
Aditi, what green you have used with crimson?
Yeah, so I've made it using lemon yellow and cerulean blue. So it's a very bright green. I think we could do with a little bit of sap green in this. I'm not sure. I get very nervous when I have to use this cerulean blue in any green. I'm perfectly fine making a green with cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, but cerulean is a little nerve-wracking. All right. So I put in a little bit of sap green as well. And here's my color. No, a little more lemon yellow is fine. Okay. So I'm going to do a flat paint over here, coming all the way to where we have to fill in the pink. And we can paint this slightly wet on wet also, but I'm not going to, where it happens, it happens. Keep rotating.
Aditi, you mixed very little cerulean, right?
I guess so. Okay, I'm just going to paint the first half. I'm hoping that some of this paint is wet. So now going to paint with. Just make sure that your brush is thoroughly washed after the green, huh? Otherwise, you'll get a very muddy crimson. Our paint needs to be fairly thick. And then literally just start making these dotted shapes along the edge. So wherever you have green, it will automatically become darker. Doesn't becoming darker though.
Aditi, it may not show darker now, but when that lighter part dries, no, that will dry lighter. This will not dry lighter.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I love it when the solution, at least a color solution, is just available in nature. It's often there, but we are in the habit of controlling so much that we don't even check to look.
Very true, very true. So last year when I went to Kerala, I decided to do all the tropical leaves that fascinated me in the garden. And I ended up doing the coleus, but as a whole plant, like this sits in the garden, you know.
Right.
So I did postcards, an entire postcard series on just tropical leaves in the garden.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So I did the coleus, and then I did this Anglaonema. Such a cute leaf it is.
Yeah.
And the fern, and so the garden crouton. Garden crouton is like full of color. I mean, full of color means you put whatever color you want wherever, and it will still look right.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was a real fun experience. Tropical plants are great to paint.
That's true. I think I had an aversion to all these plants because my mom loved to collect these. And as a young person, I just thought this is so unnatural. Leaves are green. Don't make them all these colors. What nonsense is this? Not allowed. And I rejected them and forever till I needed to paint them. And then, of course, I came across paintings by other artists who had really made these plants or even regular leaves look spectacular by adding more color. And I really felt like one of those, dogmatic, like, religious people sometimes who are saying, no, this is not allowed. Just you have to follow the book. I felt like that.
Aditi ma'am, so are you using pure crimson to create those dots?
I am using pure crimson, but for some reason, my dots are not turning out as dark. But as Susan has suggested, I'm just going to continue to do this and leave it and then come back to it with maybe a deeper green so that it becomes, so I'm not going to change the color or the combination of colors to artificially create a new shade. I think it would be possible to make this shade deeper by just adding more of the cerulean mix to it also. Let me try. This is the next lot I'm adding. This is only cerulean. One tip when you are making these dots is to keep rotating your brush. Otherwise, you'll end up with the same shape throughout. So make a few dots like that. It'll look one type. Rotate the brush and make the dots in another direction. Change the angle of holding the brush so that they don't look exactly the same. Otherwise, it'll just look like one dot, tuck, 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 tuck shape. Even without the dark shade, I think it's looking quite nice. It is still darker than the center, so that it looks pretty distinguished anyway. Now there are a lot of other green lines in between also. This is because of the, I guess, the lighting, the shadow. So you can get into as much detail as you want into these leaves. Now in both these leaves, one thing you can do after this is dried is using a thinner brush, maybe a number 0, number 1 brush. You can make a few extra lines for just shadow or dimension, just an effect. So I can take maybe this same crimson mixed with a little bit of blue and make uh, just a line like this along one edge. Then there's a little thick dark section over here. Wipe the brush and put a second layer. Maybe put a different color. So these additional things have to be done carefully and just in a few places. Otherwise, you will overpower the whole color combination. Don't use this to correct anything. Just to enhance if needed. Okay. Now, I think after this, you should be able to paint that bleeding heart. What's it called now? And similarly, this one also. The colors that I've used over here are just a wash of crimson. Maybe we can do this one. And what is the last one? Here also. So these two can be done together. The pink base is pretty much the same. The greens are slightly different. The green in this is this green, one of them. So we can make a wash of that. So let me demonstrate one here. And here it's just first going to be the same pink from this, from the left there, Aglomina. Now the pink in both these leaves is a certain type. It's almost like a peachy color. So add some other shade to it as well. I would add either gamboge or orange to change the slightly bluish hue that crimson tends to have. I'm going to use two brushes for this, one so that I can paint it quickly. I'm also going to hydrate the same green that we use for coleus. And I'm going to make a wash on one side, in the center, and the other side. And then in between, I'm going to throw in a little bit of the green. So I just wanted to see how this would work. You have this green wash. It's fairly liquid. Press the brush down so that you can put in an adequate amount and it stays wet. The edges stay wet. Then use the second brush, paint in the middle, and allow these colors to blend. So take a little bit of water and blend the middles. Here, the center has dried a little bit, so I'm going to add more color before I add green. So these things you must keep an eye on. Don't add a color till, especially for a wet on wet, unless you're sure that the edges that need to merge are wet. First, fill in the area where you need that pure green, and then take the brush along the edge. Every time you do that, the brush will pick up the second color and make the color muddy in itself. So keep wiping the brush. Using two brushes helps to keep your colors clean, your palette clean. I'm using the same shade for painting the last leaf. And if you do this, sorry?
Are they all light crimson?
I can't hear you, Ritu.
I said, is it crimson only but a lighter shade?
No, it's crimson with a little bit of orange.
Okay.
And I am putting the wash onto the crimson part. I mean the part in the leaf that is pink. But I am using a little bit of the residual paint in my brush to go over the entire leaf because we have pink colored holes in the green that will otherwise look white. You don't want that. So here all my colors come inside. Okay. See, this has become really weird. Okay, I'm going to paint this bleeding heart as well. Now, all of these, now remember that if you want a wet on wet, you must prepare all your colors in advance. I'm making the outer edge in using sap green and viridian green. And the inner edge, I'm going to use this same. And then I'm also going to leave a lot of section white. I think we could use the same green for that aglonema also. Going back to the two brushes. I'm carefully putting some light green along the edge. Now, if you look at it carefully, this leaf has a base coat of like a yellow. You can do that as well. And do just half the leaf at a time so that you can control the outcome. The outer edge needs to be wet before you apply the deeper green color. And keep it nice and thick, don't make it too watery. Make sure you insert some extra green between the veins that we've drawn. And if you fear that your initial color has dried, please add more to the edge before you go and add the dark green. You don't want stripes over here. Now, one last bit, it's already 11 o'clock, so I just want to show you. I think everything else you can paint now by yourself. The color that you make over here for the pink leaf, try using a mix of emerald green. Because the green is so dull, the emerald green is a better color to use. Any color that you have to paint light, just take less pigment, not necessarily watery, but less pigment. So I'm just going to paint a little bit to show you how emerald green looks. This is pure emerald green. And you can paint even the darker sections in this. When you come to the central vein, because this is light and it's pink, just don't paint on the line from one side. And when you're painting this, if you want to leave some parts looking like there are holes in between, just don't paint smooth sections. A little bit of cobalt blue in the emerald green should give you a dark green color. And when you're painting, paint it like this, leaving some gaps. So literally paint it in stripes back and forth. And if making these holes in the green is too much trouble, please go ahead and paint that entire section dark. It'll still look nice. You can decide on what level of difficulty you want to, uh, I guess, enjoy. There. All right. Any questions? Do you think you'd be able to finish these on your own?
Yes,
Yes, but
Aditi.
it's very amazing session. I really loved it. Because I've been seeing these leaves, I have so many of them in my garden, but I have never thought to sit down and then probably try to see how these mergings are happening. But
I
it was
know.
so interesting to see, okay, this is how this red leaf dots probably could, bring in that texture. So very interesting session for me.
Wonderful. I know it's, I would not have done it had it not been somebody's suggestion in an earlier class. So it always helps. Good. So now what I'm going to suggest is when you make these paintings, if you can put this paper up someplace where you can see it all the time, maybe for the next week or so, put it up on a wall or display it somewhere, because while there's one part of learning that happens actively, it's just my personal belief that some part of learning also happens passively, just being in the presence of something that you can look at and think about. So when you see this stuff put up somewhere in your brain, since you've done this, you've put in the action before, somewhere you start evaluating your lines, your color application, composition, and all these things get auto-corrected in your brain. And before you know it, the next illustration you're making, from somewhere you get a particular decision that has come through this subliminal learning from just keeping your artwork within your environment. So I don't have any scientific explanation for this, but I don't even have any proven experiences of my own, except for sometimes when you make art, it just blows your mind and there's no explanation for why you were able to take certain creative decisions better for that artwork when you did not really try hard, when you did not consciously try to learn anything, but it just happened. So it's from the brain just absorbing information in the background. So we can accelerate this by keeping our artwork within our environment. It could be anywhere. Just pin it up on your office board or on your wall or one section, and keep it there for as long as you can and keep changing it. Take some earlier artwork, and not always necessarily the good one. Anything, you just put anything over there. And like my mom would probably say, yeta jata. You see something, yeta jata, coming and going. It's there within your environment and you just learn.
Yeah.
There is logic to it, Aditi, because yeah,
Good.
there's a lot of subconscious learning
There
by
is.
observation. By observation.
There is. And I think we often dismiss these things. We only focus on active learning, but subconscious absorption is obviously there.
So I used
Like
to
I
teach in a
learned,
also, and we used to use the whole classroom as a subconscious learning. So everything that we learned would go up on the classroom boards. Throughout the whole classroom itself was used as a medium to learn subconsciously. So till the topic there, the drawing, text, everything, words, keywords related.
No?
Yeah, yeta jata.
Correct. I think it good. Let's try it out. Let me see how, if you all experience something, it will always come out in subsequent artworks. Inexplicable decisions in the right direction in subsequent artworks. Gosh, I should write a paper on this. If I knew. Okay. Chalo, I gotta get going because I have to go and prep for the afternoon workshop. I'll send some pictures on the Art from Home group so all of you can also enjoy remotely. Okay. See you then. See you next week. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Aditi.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Aditi. Bye, bye.